Good morning. Good morning. Let's address the elephant in the room first before we start anything else. New hat, courtesy of Mr. Dan Cullen. Dan sent me a box of goodies actually for Christmas, which I'm very grateful for. But of all of the things that he sent me, and bearing in mind there was some West Ham goodies in there as well. I mean, come on, how good does that look? I've got a Carhartt jacket. Well, I've got two Carhartt jackets actually. See me over the weekend wearing this. Oh, honestly, you'd think, "Oh, you see that fella there? Definitely a lumberjack. Definitely a lumberjack. Fantastic. Dan, you're an absolute star. Thank you very much indeed." There's Gary saying, "Nice hat. Well done, Dan." Peter McKenna saying, "I can't see an elephant." Well done. Dan saying, "Good, looks good." I agree. I totally agree. And Jim Turner has just arrived. Morning, peeps. Funny old weekend, this. As you know, I was at a funeral on Friday for former NFDC president Paul Brown. One of the things that struck me about Paul's passing, and I will touch on it again with our morning monologue. It's not about Paul specifically, but it comes up. One of the things that struck me was, well, for one thing, he was too young. He was only 66. And there are some people that just seem too large, too large, too strong, too forceful to succumb to something as mundane as death. Paul Brown, obviously. And then an absolute idol of mine when I was growing up, Billy Bonds, the former West Ham captain and West Ham manager as well. 699 games for the club, and I saw quite a few of those. 79 years old, so not a bad innings and everything else, but he was too big and too strong and too powerful to die. Feels doubly hard that he has. Yeah, will hit West Ham fans hard, that one, I think. I was actually there a couple of years ago. Obviously, West Ham moved away from the old bowling ground over to the London Stadium. And a couple of years after we moved in there, we decided to name one of the stands the Billy Bonds stand. And I was there on the day that they actually did that. And Billy Bonds was there with his wife and his daughters as well. Yeah. Yeah, tough one. Tough one. I mean, obviously, not thoughts and prayers with the family because I don't know the family, but yeah, to all the West Ham fans out there, yeah, it really is a tough one. There you are, Gary saying only the good die young. Ain't that the truth? Mick saying good morning to you all. I hope I can keep online. Well, tell the pigs to be quiet, and hopefully you can stick around for a bit. Ken Hatcher, hope unfortunately we're all headed that way. Well, there's a cheery thought for the morning, although I think that's probably explained at least partly by the weather that Ken has down in Wales as well. Loads and loads of stuff to get through today. I tell you what, rather than telling you about it, I will get the show on the road. But I said on Friday that that was the last outing of our very attractive but slightly annoying AI woman selling the sweatshirts and the t-shirts and stuff. We've got another young lady. This time she's selling books. Looks nothing like the previous one. I think you'll like her. I'm a little embarrassed by it. I may have to change it. This might be the one and only outing that it gets. But stick around for the end of the show because that's coming. Uh, Chris Ford, good morning to the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know which one you are. I think I qualified at least two of those, actually. But morning, Chris. And Mark Whiting has arrived. And you know what I say when Mark Whiting arrives? It's time to get on with the show. We have his tacit permission to start. So here we go. Yeah, Mick has just said a sad weekend for not only West Ham, but for all football fans. Years ago, and I'm probably going back, maybe 20 years. Capital Radio, which at the time I think was purely a London radio station. I think it's national now, but it was a purely London radio station, and they held a poll for listeners to name the greatest ever London football player. And it wasn't the greatest player to play in London, it was the greatest player from London to play in London. And Billy Bonds won by an absolute landslide. I mean, he got something ridiculous, like 40% of the vote, and the next in line was like 12%. Even other fans, and I mean, he started his career at Charlton before coming to West Ham. So yeah, it's a big deal, big deal. Thank you very much indeed for that, Mick. I was in hospital with 3 blokes all over the age of 90, says Peter. Yeah, Peter's back out of hospital, I'm pleased to say. I think we need to stick these oldies in bubble wrap, as these ones were only there to slip, trips and falls. 90 years old and only slips, trips and falls. Fair play to them. Dan Cullen qualifies as the good, bad and the ugly. I don't agree with that. Peter says, I'm not ugly, I'm an oak. Okay. Gary says the countdown has begun to when the big fellow in the red coat turns up. Yeah, it's well, I mean, I'm about to say it actually. I tell you what, rather than fanning around. Oh, hang on a minute, I do need to do this. Had the pleasure of meeting him at a do down at Leon C. Nice fella, got to say. Yeah, I spoke to him very, very briefly. I went to just trying to remember what it was. It was like a charity match. I think it was like the Boys of '86. 1986 was the best West Ham ever did in the Premier League. Probably the old First Division at that time, actually. Yeah, he was there. He wasn't playing, but he was there. And I did my usual thing. You know, I saw somebody that I admired enormously, queued up to meet him, and then said, 'cause I'm really shit at things like that. And yeah, he was a smashing fella, and yeah, rough as a badger's arse. And we used to have a song down at West Ham, 6'2", eyes of blue, Billy Bonds is coming for you, because he was that type of player. He was an absolute beast. Such a sad thing. Now, very quickly, Peter says he's got a new single out, and he has. In fact, Peter, I don't know if you've seen it yet. Hang on a minute. Let me have a quick look at WhatsApp. I haven't had a response yet. I actually sent you, Peter. I've done a very, very quick, it's like a 6-second video to go with your new single. It's called If Santa Was a Truck Driver. It was going to be Digger Driver, but I didn't have the same ring. No, absolutely. So I have sent you a very, very brief AI video. Didn't have a great deal of time to play with it. I mean, I literally had about 3 minutes before I was due to come on air. But have a look at WhatsApp, Peter. You might be able to have a look. Truck driver, not HGV, bloody phone. Yeah, okay. It is the song is called If Santa Was a Truck Driver. Go and give it a listen. Let's make it Christmas number 1. Probably not in the pop charts, but on our own personal charts. There you are. It is Monday, the 1st of December, as I was saying. Pinch punch, first of the month, and all of that sort of stuff. It is now, well, Christmas is imminent. Imminent. So welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming, the Santa of Demolition. In today's show, the sun rises on the new Cat 345 excavator. When Canadian demolition experts visit Memphis, what happens when 2 major manufacturers join forces? And we're going behind the scenes at Zoomline. Plus, in today's edition of Mark's Morning Monologue, the death of the Mavericks. I want to have a chat about that. Because it obviously, you know, with the funeral I was at on Friday, still sort of fresh in my mind. I wonder, do we actually have any real characters left in this business? And I do make a few exceptions. Marco Lorini being one of them, but by and large, have we not become a bit homogenized, a bit airbrushed? We'll come to it. Peter's seen the video. Good. Glad you like it. And Ken Hatcher saying, nice hat. Thank you very much indeed. I've said it already. You may not have been here at the time. I can tell you, courtesy of Dan Cullen. Dan Cullen, I think he got it from the States, which is why it looks as authentic as it does. I'm absolutely over the moon with it. Dan saying, was there anyone from the NFDC there? There were 2 former NFDC presidents there. I mean, hang on a minute, let me just do the maths. One. Hang on a minute. Who was? Sure, there were 2. Yeah, there were 2 former NFDC presidents. There was a former NFDC vice president there, but there was they were there in a kind of an individual capacity. They weren't there as representatives of the NFDC, who sent nobody, as far as I could tell. They were there purely because they like Paul Brown. That was it. Caught up with quite a few people. Saw Nick Grout from Bell Engineering, who I didn't realise, but Nick was actually the best man at Paul's wedding some years ago. Which I literally didn't know. Saw Les Squibb. Haven't seen Les in absolute ages. Good to catch up with Les. Always a pleasure. A West Ham fan as well. He will be feeling the passing of Billy Bonds today. So yes, no, it was a very good send off. There were two eulogies. One from former NFTC President William Sinclair of SafeDem, who was big mates with Paul Brown, who gave an absolutely top notch eulogy. But if anything, he was kind of surpassed. There was another guy there, and I didn't catch his name, but I think the guy was an actor or something. But he delivered a eulogy. You know that speech of "Stop the clocks" and all that sort of stuff. He did that, and an absolute rip roaring job it was. Gary says, totally agree about Marco. Anyone who puts Dreamer on his business card is a legend in my book. Yeah. As I say, I mean, he's one of those that kind of, the industry's going that way. Marco's headed over there, because that's the way he is. Peter McKenna says, BBC Radio 2 presenter Brian Hayes has died, aged 87. That name doesn't ring a bell. I don't know Brian Hayes, I don't think. But yeah, okay. Gary Muirhead says, was Dr. Terry there? I'm not, despite the fact that they moved in demolition circles, I'm not entirely sure Terry Cornby and Paul Brown really. Paul Brown was very much an NFDC man, and Terry has always been an IDE man. And yes, they do cross over from time to time. But I can't think in my head, which is where you do most of your thinking, I guess. I can't think in my head of how they might have. I don't know, but no, he wasn't. In answer to your question, wow, that's what you call respect. Unbelievable man, dedicated to his life, and that's how you pay him back. Yeah. There was an FDC meeting on Friday in London. I wonder if I haven't heard. I wonder if they actually took a moment's silence for Paul. If anyone knows, let me know. Jim says, I put a post on LinkedIn over the weekend that pretty much says the same thing about things getting a bit samey. My post is about the backhoe loader and its stagnation since the early 80s. You will hear. You will hear when we get to it. I'm talking about people specifically, but I do agree about that sameness. I do wonder where the innovation is coming from if we just Marco Lorini, for example, would not be tolerated at a major manufacturer. The reason that he does what he does and the reason he's successful at what he does is because he's doing it with his own name over the door. If you put Marco Lorini into a Liebherr or a Volvo or a Caterpillar or whatever it might be, I'm fairly sure he would not be given the leeway to do what he does. And I mean, I think that's just an example. I reference music when we get to it, and I just get the feeling that we, in our striving to not upset anyone, to achieve perfection, we're not risking enough. And as I say, I mean, my spiel is about people, but that person that everybody's saying that, and there'll be somebody over here saying, "Hang on a minute, you're talking bollocks." Nobody seems to do that anymore. It's everyone nods and agrees, and bosses of companies do the same as their predecessor because that way you don't get fired, and so on down the line. Really listen to it when we get to it. Mick says, had a call over the weekend regarding Unimetal going to the wall. Any ideas as to why? Not really. Not really. Thank you very much indeed. Whoever just said nice hat collection over on on Instagram. Can't pronounce the name, but thank you very much indeed. There's way more all around. I know you can't see them, but thank you very much indeed. Unimetals, yeah, Unimetals. Obviously, we know that they bought Sims a year, 18 months ago, whatever it might be, and apparently they had been trying to sell the whole thing on, and it fell through. It never happened, and yeah, they've gone to the wall. No idea what the underlying was. I mean, I think they're blaming volatility of the scrap metal market, which frankly, I, is no great surprise. I think we all know just how up and down that can be. But yeah, no specific explanation as yet, but we shall see. Chris Forward says, I was at funeral Friday as well. John Clark. What he didn't know about rebuilding Broken Crush wasn't worth knowing. It got very messy. It was like the who's who of crushing. Yeah. This I would imagine. I mean, I had to bail. I had to leave by about 3:00 because I had to get back home again. But yeah, listen, if Friday's funeral for Paul Brown ended up getting messy, it would have been wholly appropriate. Let me put it like this. Jim says the stagnation of machine type designs comes from the manufacturers losing the maverick tendencies. Thank you. Thank you. As no one seems in a rush to stand out and do anything different. You're absolutely on the money. Now, as I say, I've related it specifically to people, and I've related it specifically to the wider industry. But when was the last time? Let's take Marco Lorini out of the picture. Take him out. Who do you consider to be a maverick these days? I mean, genuinely, I can't think of any. And I do mention when I get, I'm kind of giving the game away a bit here. But when you think back, we look at the JCB of today, for example, and it's glossy and it's professional and it's very good at what it does. But Joe Bamford would have been considered a maverick back in the day. I've seen Lord Bamford has put up a video today. I don't suppose he did it himself, but somebody's put it up on his behalf because he has now been chairman for 50 years as of today. I'll probably bring you that video tomorrow. But yeah, I have enormous respect for Lord Bamford and all that he's achieved. But a maverick, not like his dad. Now, I always say the same thing. I mean, what he's actually done with JCB probably exceeds the achievements of his dad. But his dad was the maverick. His dad went, we could do that better, and then did. That's my feeling. Chris says Unimetal's got let down by a lender. Yeah, apparently they had a buyer right up until the 11th hour, and then the buyer went, nah, which is brilliant. Dan Cullen saying, howdy Mick, how's Italy, pal? When did Paul pass? I'll look it up. It's a good 4 weeks ago, Mick. And Mick, yes, we are on about Claude's boy. Yeah, we are absolutely on about Claude's boy. For those of you who don't know, Claude Brown, another former NFTC president, his son Paul was the one whose funeral I attended on Friday last week. Very much chip off the old block, I would say. I mean, I don't know how well anybody here actually knew Claude, or I'm assuming that Mick knew Claude. But anyone that knew Paul would know he was very, very much a chip off the old block. Dan saying there's no incentive to being different. No one wants to venture out of the box. You're right. I haven't mentioned this, so I don't mind actually saying this. I remember at the height of Amy Winehouse's, when she was at her biggest and her best, Back to Black had been out, and Don't Want to Go to Rehab, and all of those things. And they started a new series of it was either The X Factor or Britain's Got Talent. And Simon Cowell actually said, right down the barrel of the camera, we're looking for the next Amy Winehouse. Why? We've got one. She's brilliant. We don't want Amy Winehouse light. The reason Amy Winehouse was what Amy Winehouse was because she was an original. Okay? Cliff Richard was not a British Elvis. Shakin' Stevens was not a British Elvis. We had an Elvis, and that Elvis was fantastic. Leave it the fuck alone. Do something original, and unfortunately, we don't. I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and one of the bits of advice that people are given is, in order to have a successful video, Go and see what someone else has done. Copy it. What's the point of that? What is the point of that? Mick says, F me, no one told me. Feel a bit guilty now, not knowing. Sorry, Dan, it's about 13 and cloudy just now. It's windy and rainy and about 4 degrees outside my front door at the moment, so you're doing better than us. Mick, listen, keep an eye on Demolition News, that's all I can say. I mean, we have spoken about Paul's passing for a while, but I realise you're up to your eyes in all things Italian. I don't blame you for missing it. Yeah, it is a loss. I mean, he was a mate above all else. I mean, yes, our paths ended up. I was telling somebody, I actually worked for Paul Brown for a while. He was selling plant. He had a company called Bacco Plant, which was an importer of Kramer wheel loaders for a while, based I don't know 5 miles up the road from where I'm sat now. And I was doing his PR, and then he went back into Demolition. And I stuck with my PR, but then as I went off that way and he went off the other way, and then I kind of came back to Demolition and he stuck with Demolition. So at some point, whatever it was, we bumped back into each other. And as a result of that bumping back into each other, we ended up being the co-authors on the original high reach guidance that the NFDC did. I say the NFDC did, Paul Brown did. I just corrected his grammar. That was it. That was my contribution. I've tagged all the major backhoe loader manufacturers in my post, stated I have a few designs that would drag the backhoe loader into today's mindset of buyers, hirers, and operators. I don't expect any interest from them. Yeah, I wonder. And Claude was a total gent, and Paul, definite chip off his dad's shoulder. Yes, 100%. It's quite interesting, actually. We were there to say goodbye to Paul, but Claude came up a lot, even in the eulogies and stuff like that. He came up a lot. Such was the connection between the two of them. Anyway, people, I've babbled on long enough. Let's actually start the show, shall we? Let's start with. Well, we'll do this, and then, I'm going to do this, which is a Caterpillar ad, and then I'm going to show you a new Caterpillar machine. Feels a bit unpleasant, but yeah, it's just the way it falls. Yeah, the Mighty Caterpillar has a brand new video out, and it marks the sunrise, not the sunset, the sunrise of the brand new Cat 345.
In a world built on progress, performance isn't optional, it's the expectation. Meet the Cat 345 hydraulic excavator, where efficiency, power, and comfort come together to redefine what productivity feels like. With low fuel consumption engineered into every detail, the 345 gives you real results and real efficiency, protecting your bottom line every single shift. And when the work gets heavy, the 345 moves more with less effort. Powerful hydraulics and precise control keep every bucket full and every cycle fast, from trenching and pipe work to mass excavation. We know uptime's critical, and that's why the 345 is built to keep you working. Extended service intervals, fewer filters, and simplified access means less time in the shop and more time on the job. Whether it's hammering, trenching, or loading trucks, the 345 adapts with strength and stability. Its hydraulic circuits are tuned for a wide range of attachments, delivering dependable power across any terrain. Inside the cab is where precision meets protection. Quiet, pressurized, and built for comfort to keep operators safe, informed, and performing at their best. The Cat 345 is efficiency refined, power proven, and built for those who move the world one job, one load, one day at a time.
In answer to Chris Ford, who says, will the 345 be available in the UK market? As far as I know, yes, but I'm not sure. It's hard to tell, but generally, Caterpillar goes global. There are variations from market to market in terms of emissions and that kind of thing, but generally they do go global. If there's a model, it's a model that's available everywhere. But I've not seen anything that specifically says it's a UK available machine, but I've also not seen anything that says it's not a UK available machine. Watch this space. But yeah, the opening of that video, anybody else think that looks like Lion King? Maybe just me. Dan Cullen said, wow, looks nice. Yeah, absolutely. And Dan also says, no one likes to speak up or call others out. And this is what I see on site. No one has your back. Yeah. Although I think your environment is a little bit different. At the cutting edge, I do think your environment is a little bit different. But when I think back to manufacturers, but more specifically industry leaders, the heads of the Institute of Demolition Engineers. Thankfully, I think we've got a bit of a character in there at the moment. Terry Cornby was a character, did things his own way. John Woodward did things his own way. I think they certainly count. Going back a bit further in the NFDC, Sidney Hunt Sr., Claude Brown, Dave Darcy, Erith, I think they did, but a lot of the others have been a bit. I like Jim's word, samey. It's like, let's not do anything new. Let's just replicate what we've done before, because that won't upset the apple cart. I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. And speaking of Jim, he says, all it would cost a manufacturer, we're talking about backhoe loaders and Jim's top secret designs, all it would cost is a 5-year contract in their R&D department. There you are. Manufacturers of backhoe loaders. You know where to find Jim. And if you don't, just go over to YouTube and look for his YouTube channel. You'll find him easily enough. What do we got next? Oh, yeah, we're bizarre, actually. We're going off to Memphis in Tennessee with Canadians in a second.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, I think we all know Priestley Demolition by now. They are one of Canada's foremost demolition contractors, but they are not constrained by borders. No, certainly not. So they've headed from the frozen north down to the much warmer south in Memphis, Tennessee.
We're currently on level 18. At this point, we have brought down the staircases, the elevator shafts. We have started taking sections of the east wall. For that operation, we used a saw that we attached to one of our machines. As you can see, it has an oil quick shoe. We attach it to one of the 85s. We make a vertical cut. We hammer it. We bring the piece in. On the other side, we're starting to remove slab for level 18. How we're doing it for that specific scenario, we're breaking holes, we're rigging the piece, and we're breaking the squares where we're able to lift them up with the crane and bring them down to the ground level where we're able to process the material, process the concrete, the rebar. So as you can see on that side, we have removed 3 portions of the slab, 1 bay and a half. We're moving to do the next section of the slab. Give me a little bit of winch down so I can gauge it a little bit better. Now we're starting to rig the piece. We're gonna put the chains through. Eventually the piece is gonna be rigged. and we're gonna finish hammering all the edges, cut the bar, send the slab downstairs. Now that the piece is rigged, we're starting to break the edges. Once the rebar is exposed, we're gonna cut the rebar. Eventually, when all three sides are chipped, all the bar is cut, we're gonna lift the piece, send it downstairs. Now that all the rebar is cut, we're gonna hoist the slab downstairs. So below the active demolition, we have at least 2 stories shored up to make sure that we keep the building structurally sound and to bear the weight of the equipment that we have up above.
Very good, right? Let's have a look. Going back to designs and stuff, the cart is there to be rocked. A better apple might then find its way to the top, says Jim. Jim, you and I are singing from the same hymn sheet, my friend. This guy is really doing my nutting, says Dan. Which guy? The guy on that video, or is somebody where you are? Let me know. Read your opinion on your post this morning, sent you an email. Got to admit, mate, I think you hit the nail on the head in your words. I really do think the demo game is in freefall. The card system is bad enough, but all this bollocks of MVQ is a total no-brainer. Apprenticeship schemes are set up, but the youngsters these days don't have the time or the patience. They've been born into a culture where money rules the roost. I'll look out for your email. I've got a load of emails coming down the line because I've sent something out this morning. I haven't had it yet, Mick, but I'm sure it will filter its way through in the not too distant future. A couple more films to show you. Got an interesting one coming up in just a second, actually.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Now, we all know what Senebogen does. Does it very well. You may have come across the company Linde, Linde. As far as I was concerned, I thought Linde was like a lift truck, forklift manufacturer, but apparently they dabble elsewhere, because Senebogen and Linde have got themselves together. They've got around a table and said, we can do this whole telehandler nonsense a bit better. Mavericks, if you will. And this is what they've come up with. There you are. Pretty smart, I would say. Dan, you said here, you missed my previous message, guy on the 3:30. Not seen it. I've literally been from start to finish with today's messages, not seen it. I don't know whether that went awry completely or whether it didn't send properly, but I've not seen it, so I don't know what you're talking about. Let me know. Chris Ford, when he said they were shoring up at least 2 floors below, got me thinking, what would the loading be on the 3rd floor if they had a failure? This is why I'm not a structural engineer. Would it overload it? My guess is it probably would. I mean, is that not the 9/11 effect? The pancaking. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not a structural engineer either. I mean, I'm sure it can help to withstand some. Can it withstand all? If there are any structural engineers watching, please let me know. And Dan also says that would be great for loading trucks. It did load trucks in the video, basically at the time you said it, Dan. I think so. Perfectly timed for that. I've got a bit of a story to tell you before I show you our new advert. I don't know if anybody's tried this. I've only stumbled across it. I promise I wasn't trying to do anything questionable. All of the AI models, Grok, Gemini 3, all of them, they are all censored, basically. You can't tell most of the legal ones to create images of naked women and stuff like that. They draw a line, and they also draw a line at overemphasizing certain body parts. Like if I wanted a picture of a woman working in an office, it would happily give me that. If I said I want a woman working in an office and she has enormous boobs, it would refuse to produce it. We can't get our sweatshirts out now in time for Christmas, so we've killed that ad, but we've got a load of books on sale over in our buymeacoffee.com/demolition news bookstore. So I thought, well, between now and Christmas, we'll do a bit of an advertising campaign on that. So I went over to Grok, which is Elon Musk's AI, and I said, give me an image of a woman reading a book, and then I'll build the videos on it. Okay, you're about to meet the woman that they gave me, and as I say, I couldn't ask for a woman of outlandish proportions. Take a look at what Grok gave me purely by chance. Enjoy.
Visit buymeacoffee.com/demolition news/extras. It will put a smile on your face.
Yeah. If I'd asked for that, I would have been declined. I probably would have been flagged as some kind of pervert. But no, Grok itself decides, no, let's make her ample. I may not use that again. It feels slightly at odds with my usual way of doing things, but yeah. Dan, yeah, wouldn't kick her out for farting. Thank you for that, Dan. Puts a smile on mine, says Mick, see? Oh, well, maybe I don't do away with it. Hang on a minute, what we got here? Mick says, puts a smile on mine. No, that's 2 lumps in the coffee then? Yeah, two distinct lumps. Every bucket is bang, 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 bang. He has no clue what he's doing. He's all over the place. This is the guy on the 3:30, apparently. And Chris saying, no fun in one of those then. No, as I say, I mean, I don't have any need of images of voluptuous women. There's plenty of those on the internet if you want to go and look for them. Don't have a need for it. But literally, I just said, attractive blonde woman, I think was my description, reading a book. And that's what they came up with. Yeah. Jim, comment of the day goes to Jim Turner. Most folk would like her, but she'll still have her knockers. Top work, mate. Top work. We have one final video. We are jetting off to China. Yeah. We're going to have a poke around the Zoomline factory. Now, I know some of you have been to the JCB World headquarters, which is, it's an impressive plant. It is a very impressive plant, not knocking it for one moment. Have a look at the scale of the Zoomline factory. Ended rather more abruptly than I expected, but there you are. That's Zoomline. And as Dan Cullen says, that's huge, but China don't do things in small measures. They're taking over the world. They are. And there was another comment to that. In fact, Mick says, that's not a factory, that's a town. Pretty much is. Pretty much is. I got so caught up in our young lady's appearance that I completely forgot to give you the bookstore address. There you are, buymeacoffee.com/demolition news/extras. Most of the books here are free. Why would you not? Just go help yourself, particularly when you think about Christmas coming up. You know, when Gone with the Wind or The Sound of Music comes on for the 9 millionth time, just open a Demolition News book and have a read. Some impressive factory. That, yeah, absolutely right. Dan saying, I wonder what the floor space is in that factory. No idea, but man alive, unbelievable place. Now, bit jealous here actually. Chris Ford saying, I'm on a jolly with JCB TC Harrison tomorrow. I'll spare you all a thought. Please do. Please do take some photographs. Send us some photographs of what you're up to. And Jim saying, somehow still haven't been on the JCB tour yet. Jim, it's up the road. Go and do it. Go and do it. And Dan has still got it in for his 3:30 operator. If you get news of a man being arrested for shoving another guy head in the dirt, that's me. He is doing my nutting. Dan, count to 10, deep breaths. You'll get through it. Probably. That's pretty much it for the main part of this morning show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very, very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back immediately after this to talk about the death of the Maverick. When I first started my career as a construction equipment journalist, there was a guy called Rodney Biles who worked for a rival magazine called New Civil Engineer. He was maybe 10 years older than me, and while others were fawning over equipment manufacturers in the hope of securing advertising cash, Rodney was notoriously bristly and curmudgeonly. He was also very, very funny. In fact, the comedian Jack D may well have based his stage persona on old Rodders. Rodney Biles would listen intently to press conferences in which manufacturers told us what they wanted us to know. He would then write an article that largely ignored all of that, and instead he told readers what they needed to know. Rodney Biles in my industry was a maverick. He was my idol. Over the years, I've found myself attracted to the maverick type, those that march to the beat of their own drum, sometimes literally. Mick Jagger might be the face of the Rolling Stones, but for me, Keith Richards, part fossil, part pirate, occasional guitarist, he's the cool one in the band. Pete Townsend wrote the songs for The Who, and Roger Daltrey twirled his microphone, but tucked in the way in the background was the real star of the show, drummer Keith Moon, a certified lunatic with drumsticks. Do need to clear my throat. That's better. And then, of course, there was David Bowie, the Maverick's maverick. Whenever popular culture veered off in one direction, you could always find Bowie heading the opposite way. I like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino as much as the next movie fan, but hellraisers like Richard Harris, Peter O'Toole and Robert Shaw always seem to enjoy their lives and their fame a whole lot more. Now, over the years, the construction equipment sector has thrown up a few mavericks of its own. JCB of today, for example, is the epitome of glossy professionalism, but the man who started it all, Joe Bamford, was a rebel with a cause. Likewise, over in Italy, Marco Lorini wears his maverick badge with pride. Sadly, however, it appears that the mavericks are a dying breed, and following Paul Brown's funeral last week, it feels like they have just taken a step closer to their ultimate demise. Much of Paul Brown's maverick streak was inherited, of course. His father, Claude, was a larger-than-life character who could bend the entire demolition industry through sheer force of will. It's little wonder that Claude Brown and his compatriot, Sidney Hunt Sr., are still hailed as heroes within the UK demolition industry. They came from an age when being a maverick wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated. Those days, like the crawler cranes and the wrecking balls they used, are gone. Today, we live in an age in which music is auto-tuned, meaning every note is pitch perfect and utterly lacking in soul. Social media feeds bombard us with people possessing perfect bodies, perfect teeth, perfect hair, living perfect lives. And all of that has seeped into our industry. LinkedIn profiles are illustrated by airbrushed and photoshopped images that make people look less like demolition professionals and more like movie stars. Articles, blog posts, and speeches are passed through AI filters to remove all traces of negativity, passion, and humanity. New ideas are greeted with suspicion, and innovation is heresy. We used to say that opinions are like arseholes. Everyone has one. In today's world, opinions are like tonsils. You're better off without them. Industry leaders come and go, each one a clone of the last, echoing and repeating the thoughts of their predecessors, although at least Adrian McLean has had the balls to shake things up a bit. And I see all of this playing out so clearly because my industry, the media industry, has already been down this path. We drank the Kool-Aid years ago. We sold out. Where we once had Rodney Biles telling readers what they needed to do, where we once had Rodney Biles telling readers what they needed to know and holding equipment manufacturers to account, we now have so-called journalists telling them what they're being paid to tell them. We have influencers telling you this week that the machine behind them is the greatest in the world before telling you next week that another machine is the best in the world, simply because the check from the second manufacturer is now cleared. Seriously, how much credibility would the old Top Gear have had if week after week Clarkson, Hammond and May told you that each new car was perfect? Now, thankfully, the removal of mavericks in my industry has merely changed the words. Negativity has been erased, and as a result, readers and viewers are just less well informed. However, the loss of mavericks in the wider industry is far more damaging. A failure to forge new paths leaves the industry set in its ways while the world moves on. If we continually trot out the same worn-out cliches, we just commit ourselves to continually repeating the mistakes of the past. On Friday last week, I attended the funeral of former NFDC President Paul Brown. His family gathered to say goodbye to a husband, father, and grandfather. His mates were there to bid farewell to a good friend. Many from the demolition industry were there too. None of them said it, but I think we were all thinking it. Paul Brown was a white rhino, possibly the last of his kind. With his passing, the age of the demolition maverick may just have ended. As Jim rightly said, it's not just a demolition thing, it's a wider thing. Even when you think about politicians, which I try not to do if I can possibly help it, but you think about politicians, it is now, by appearance alone, it is impossible to tell between any of them. You know, they all have the same tailor. They all wear the same tie with the same knot. They all speak in that way that politicians speak, emphasizing specific points, not answering questions, but telling you what they want you to know. And so on. It's now impossible to tell between a Labour MP, a Conservative MP, a Liberal Democrat MP. They are all homogenised and identical. Music these days is largely the same. I mentioned before the show, or during the show, but before the monologue, Amy Winehouse. When was the last time we had an Amy Winehouse, or a Jimi Hendrix, or an Elvis, or a Sex Pistols? When was the last time? It's a long, long time ago. And you look at movie stars. You know, when was the last time we had what you would call a Hellraiser movie star? Thinking back, I think the last or the most recent was probably Mickey Rourke. Obviously, you know, we've had Jack Nicholson over the years, and as I mentioned, Robert Shaw, Peter O'Toole, Oliver Reed, people like that. Where are they now? They're all highly polished and highly professional and all doing the same thing time and time again. Let's head on over to the chat, shall we? See what the chat is saying. We've got, there you are. I think folk have lost the bravery to go against the grain. Personally, I like being the person that's in the minority, openly doing things differently. Yeah, I must admit, I do get a certain kick out of that. And I don't, I would say, Jim, you and I are cut from a similar cloth. I know we don't agree on everything, but I think we're cut on from a similar cloth. And I don't pitch up here to be deliberately contrarian. That's not strictly true. Sometimes I do pitch up here to be deliberately contrarian. You know, the market says this, and I've said something completely different. I do that on purpose. But when did we lose the ability, the will, the balls to stand up and just go, would the industry be in the same parlous state that it is today if we had stronger, more forthright, more forceful people at the helm? You know, I'm thinking back. I mean, I've already done quite a bit on Paul and Claude Brown, but let's think about, for those of you that remember, Mick would probably remember Sid Hunt Senior. You know, probably one of the most famous people in the demolition industry in the UK. If the government had said in Sid Hunt's time, we're doing away with your red diesel rebate, man alive, light blue touch paper and stand back because it's going off. There would have been outcry. He would have been summoning MPs to the NFDC head office. He would have been reading them the Riot Act. He would have been effing and jeffing all over the place, sending them away with a flea in their ear. Whereas what the leaders of today's industry did was, oh, that's a shame. Oh, well. When was the last time that, I'm not going to make this about the NFDC, I promise you I'm not, but when was the last time that the NFDC did something notable, that stood up and said, we are going, you know, we're going to forge this, we are going to pursue this, you know, and it doesn't even matter what it is, you know, whether it's a health and safety thing, a mental health thing, a women in construction thing, whatever, you know, even if it's just a really, really tiny thing, but just to stand up and say, this will not stand. We are not fucking having this. We are going to, this is where we stand and this is where we will fight. I literally cannot remember the last time that happened. And yet that was always what made the NFDC and the demolition industry what it was. It was, we've taken enough and we will take no more. You have taken the piss now. We are not complying. We will not do this. Whereas now it's just a surrender after surrender after surrender. And even when we're not talking about things of a legislative nature, you know, when we're talking about, you know, we meet as a group. We meet here day in, day out, you know, 5 days a week generally, and we talk about things that bother us, that concern us, that make us fearful for ourselves, for the future of the industry, for young people in the industry, for old people in the industry, for women in the industry. We talk about all of these things. We all know what the issues are. Now, given a magic wand, I'm sure we could fix a few of those. But, you know, ultimately, I am but a journalist. I'm the bloke sat on the fence by the side, watching all of this play out. You have people within the NFDC, the IDE, the CPA, Build UK, all of these bodies who purportedly support the industry, all watching the same things as we do unfurl, and they all just sit there and, oh, well, yeah, that's a shame. That's a shame. You know, we spent 10 years trying to get more women into construction, and now they're leaving in their droves. Oh, that's a pity. Yeah. We've got people retiring at a faster rate than at any time previously, and we haven't got enough young people to replace them. Oh, well, that'll probably be a problem then, won't it? Shame. Where is that Where are their balls? Where are their balls? Where is the person? Where is the person? Sat around a boardroom table. Oh, well, there's this going on, and there's that going on, and there's this problem and that problem. Where is the person banging the desk and saying, "Hang on a fucking minute, hang on, we can sort this. We will not comply. We will do this. We will take the bull by the horns, and we will do this." No, we just do the same thing, time and time and time again. Trade association wise, I think one of the issues is that nobody wants to be seen to be upsetting the apple cart. Paul Brown was president, should have been president for 2 years. He was president for 13 months, I think, because he would call a spade a spade. So they ousted him. And pretty much most of the presidents before him and all of the presidents after him have towed the same line. We'll do this, and then I'll pass it over to him, and he will do that too. And then we'll pass it over to him, and he will do that too. To the point where it just becomes so bland. If hell froze over tomorrow and somebody said, we're all out of options, we need an NFTC president, let's give the gig to Mark Antony, I promise you this will never happen. But if they did, my first thought would be, what can I do to make the lot of members better? And my second thought is, what do I want my legacy to be? If I've got 2 years, when my 2 years is up and I'm walking away, I want to be able to look back and say, in my time, we did that. Even if it's a tiny, tiny thing. But, when we talk about in years to come, that president did that, and that Mark Antony, he was an arsehole. Nobody liked him, but at least he did that. But no, we have this bland, homogenized leaders as Muzak. That inoffensive but fucking annoying music you get in an elevator. I sound like an American now, an elevator, a lift. That music that's playing in the background. Do, 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 do. Who the fuck writes that? Who produces that? Who plays the instruments? It's awful, and it's bland, and it's wallpaper. Those are the leaders we have in the industry now. And going back to Jim's point, and I will go over to the chat in a minute, but going back to Jim's point, I think Joe Bamford was a maverick, and I also think that Joe Bamford was a genius, a man ahead of his time, 100%. And I will argue the point with anyone that comes at me. I realise there are question marks over whether he invented the backhoe loader or whether he invented the telescopic handler, but bollocks and all of that. The man was a maverick. The man was a genius. The man was a visionary, right? But was the backhoe loader of 1985 truly the ultimate backhoe loader? Now, obviously, it's been refined over time. We've got some add-ons, and we've got cleaner engines, and we've got some bells and whistles and everything else. But by and large, if you drew a silhouette of a 1985 backhoe loader and a silhouette of a 2025 backhoe loader, you'd be pretty hard pushed to tell the difference. And this is not I'm not leveling a criticism at JCB here, because Caterpillar, John Deere, Case, Komatsu are all in the backhoe loader market. They're all pretty much identical. Are we really convinced that in 40 years, all we've done is add some bells and whistles? We've added a cleaner engine and, some additional mirrors. And we've got some cameras on board now, and, the seat's a bit more comfy, and the ashtray has given way to a coffee cup holder because we're all coffee drinkers these days. But by and large, everything else is really? Is that right? Where is the person coming in from left field and saying, like a gym? I mean, I don't even know what his designs are, but somebody coming along and saying, it's good, but what about this? Now, I mentioned Marco Lorini. You look at the Setanta high-reach excavator. It looks markedly different. It looks like a crane. So the foot of the boom is shifted right to the back of the machine. Okay. Now, in terms of balance and stability, I'm sure it's a good thing. It looks weird. First time you see it, it's like, Christ, that does look bloody odd. Is it better? I don't know. But rather than just repeating the same thing that everybody does, he's decided, okay, the industry's going there. I'm going to have a look over here. I'm going to see what's around this corner here. As I say, I don't know if it's better. I don't know if it's as good, but at least somebody has taken a step back and went, I reckon we could do that better. And I'll go even further. I remember having this conversation with, sadly no longer with us, Richard Comley, who said, have you noticed how much demolition attachments are like, or demolition equipment looks like it's stemmed from nature? So, you show a high-reach excavator to a young child, and they immediately say, oh, dinosaur or giraffe, because, long neck and everything else. And when you look at the actual attachments themselves, the shears look like a finch's beak, or, a set of jaws look like a crocodile's jaws, or whatever it might be. Now, Mother Nature is really bloody good at what she does. But is that perfect? Bearing in mind, no finch and no crocodile has ever had to munch concrete, are we still convinced that that's absolutely the most effective way of doing that job? Or could we not take a step back and go, actually, it would be better if we did this? Let me go over to the chat. Dan says, very true. It's monotonous. The amount of people that copy another person, no bollocks in the industry. They don't stand for what's right or stand for what's different. I wonder, and I'm not speaking specifically about the NFTC because I think they're all equally guilty of this. I've been in lots of meetings over the years with groups of people, 10, 12, 15, 20 people. And one of the hardest things to do is to go against the popular opinion. Oh, we're going to do this. Oh, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. What do you think, Mark? The easy way to go about things is say, I'm in. It's quite hard to say, what the fuck are you talking about? Have you listened to yourself? You're talking bollocks, mate. It's tough. It is tough. And we have lost that ability. And I do think, and I'm going to level this more at Sid Hunt and Paul Brown. Not so much Claude, although Claude was very forceful. They both had the ability to basically not worry about what others thought, and to say and to do and to enact what they believed to be right. Look at my side of the industry. You know who other people are doing largely what I do, not LiveStream perhaps, but writing and stuff. And by and large, we all go to a press conference or whatever it might be. They all come back, oh, so-and-so said this, and that's a good idea, and so-and-so said that, and that's a good idea. Where is the person? Where is the, I mentioned my old mate Rodney Biles. Where is the person saying, that makes no fucking sense at all? Or you reckon you've invented a thing? I saw that 6 months ago. But nobody will do that. Nobody will go against the flow. Well, in my own small way, I like to think I do. It doesn't win you any popularity contests. But that's not my job. And I don't think that's the job of an industry leader. I don't think that's the job of an innovator. When you're talking specifically about equipment, you shouldn't be designing machines to please your colleagues, or to please your boss, or to please the owner of the company. You should be designing machines that customers will go, I want one of them. It's not like anything else, but I want one of them. And I saw somebody did actually say, Dan, the Swedes make a cool backhoe loader. Yeah. I mean, to a large degree, I mean, it's still backhoe loader shape, but the Hudig, backhoe loaders are going that way, Hudig went that way. And I agree with that entirely. Laziness comes into it as well, as they want to throw it on to the next person. I think that cuts both ways. I agree with you, Dan. I absolutely agree with you. But that's one that strikes me as the strangest of all. When you look at trade association presidents and vice presidents, you've got a very small window in which to make your presence felt. In some cases it's 2 years, some cases it's 3 years, whatever it might be. A bit like politicians, whatever you say about Keir Starmer or Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whoever, you've got a pretty limited period. My feeling, and I don't, I mean, I'm odd in other ways, but I don't believe this makes me odd. I think, my feeling would be, I've got that much time. I've got that. What can I do in that time that will make a lasting difference? No, I mean, to the point where, if I were made president of the NFDC, another meeting, for the love of God. No, do this thing here and make a difference. But that's not the way it works. Jim says, we only get moderate change in very small increments nowadays. Like folk are scared to stand out with passionate belief in their own ideas. That should be the tagline for my article today, because that's absolutely right. That's absolutely on the money. If they toe the line, they're just puppets. Yeah, exactly. No one wants to stand up against the upper hierarchy. Yeah. Going back to Joe Bamford, Joe attracted other mavericks and encouraged them to design, build things that no one else would be manufacturing. Yeah. I've kind of missed somebody off the list, and I will drop him into this, into the conversation. David Kukurik, up at Kukurik. We need higher reach excavators. We will build them for you. Quite nice if we could have a telescopic. Okay, we'll master that as well. But not just that. I mean, I don't think he made any money on it. But at one point, Dave Kukurik woke up one morning and thought, I reckon I could make a better boat than other people. And he built a boat. An engineering company that specializes in modifying excavators woke up one morning and decided he could make a better boat, and did. Whether it was better or not, I don't know. Whether he made any money on it, I don't know. But surely that's what innovators do. You look at a thing and go, I reckon I could do better than that. There's I wish I could remember the French for it. There's a poster in, it's up in the JCB headquarters, and you see it at the top of stairs and stuff like that. But it basically, the translation, it was said by a Frenchman about Joe Bamford. He's never content. I can't remember what exactly the French is, but never content. And that is what JCB is built on. We've built this. It's good, but next iteration we'll do it a little bit different. It'll be a bit better. A little bit better. Those are incremental changes, but they're never quite satisfied. But where is that? Where is the original? Where is the Joe Bamford coming along and saying, excavators? Yeah, they've looked like that for years. Time to do something different. Bearing in mind what we've had in the passage of time, changes in our ability to weld and to make metal, technology, the need for cleaner engines. When you think about all that we have available to us now, CAD/CAM design, 3D printing, all of the stuff that we have at our disposal now, compared to what Joe Bamford had in his shed back in 1940, whatever it was, He's in a shed and he's using bits of aircraft to make equipment. He had no technology, no tooling, no facilities, and yet he changed the industry forever. And we have all of that tech, all of that expertise, all of that experience, all of that knowledge, everything available to us at the click of a button, and we just trot out the same thing time and time again. Jim says, yes, Dan, my post did the same, only Hudig and Lannon are doing anything different, and maybe Hydrema too. Yeah, I mean, I've always thought Hydrema are a little underrated. And I used to think it was kind of an isolation thing. They're in a country where they've kind of done their own thing, and when you go to Japan, for example, a lot of their attachments are massive because they earthquake proof all of their buildings, and then they require, so they've had to, because of their environment, they've had to do things differently. But we should have that. We have a very specific environment. We have a very specific customer base. Nowhere else in the world has a plant hire industry like we do. 85, 90% of all equipment in this industry or in this country rather, is sold to plant hire companies, rental companies. Nowhere else has that. So you would have thought, particularly the machines that are actually built here, the JCBs, the Thwaites and what have you, you would have thought that ours would have reflected that, but they don't. And this is a really strange analogy to draw. A friend of mine went to Peru many years ago, and I won't bore you with the details, but she was served guinea pig. She was staying with a family, and she was served guinea pig, which is, it's not a local delicacy, it's what they've got. There are no restaurants. Supermarkets are miles away, if they exist at all. What we've got is guinea pig, and you as the guest, you get the biggest piece of guinea pig. Okay, but they have adapted and adopted that which is available to them. Look at the UK. We have a ready supply of rabbits. We have rabbits running wild in the country. When was the last time anybody here ate rabbit? When was the last time you went into a butcher's and saw rabbit? We don't. And yet you'd have thought, because of the, we're an island nation, and we, our most ready source of wild meat is rabbit, and most of the country go, "Ooh, poor old bunny." It's madness. You wouldn't find the Peruvians say, "Oh, cute little guinea pig." They're pets elsewhere in the world. No, it's chow down and bloody eat 'em. What I'm trying to say is, we have a very specific environment, weather-wise, sustainability-wise. We have particular demands, ultra low emission zones and everything else. We have a plant hire industry. Everywhere else in the world has a rental industry. We have a plant hire industry that tends to work in a very specific and well-proven way. And yet 99.9% of the equipment that we operate in this industry is exactly the same as France, Spain, Italy, America, New Zealand, Japan, Australia. That doesn't make any sense, does it? The easiest thing for me to do is go against the rest, but only if it's what I truly believe. Mustn't that be an awful thing to actually have a belief, an idea, a position, but to force it down and to not air it for fear of upsetting someone? You're sat in a committee meeting within a manufacturer, within a trade association, within an industry body, and you're sat there thinking, everybody around me is completely mad. I have the solution, but do I really want to be that guy? Do I want to be known as the pariah, the outlier, the maverick, the rebel? Probably easiest if I keep my head down. Just nod along. Jim says, hang on a minute, something just went weird. An innovator. Oh my God. An innovator solves problems and expands on themes, ideas. I don't see enough innovation nowadays. No. I've said this before. Here's how things seem to work. Let's fast forward to Bauma 2027. Bauma 2027. So it's in their backyard. So Lee Pair arrive with a new form of dump truck, a new form of ADT that isn't on wheels, it isn't on tracks, it's on hover pads. Bear with me. It's like nothing the world has ever seen. It might only be in prototype form, but they have a hover ADT. It can go anywhere, uses virtually no fuel. It's a marvel. It's an engineering marvel. By the time Bauma 2030 rolls around, Caterpillar, Komatsu, Hitachi, and so on will also have a hover ADT. Only the Caterpillar one might have a hover ADT with a sloping bonnet. The Hitachi one might have a hover ADT, but this one's got a different camera system. And they all just... So here's a new level. Well, I can go to there. And then the next manufacturer, well, actually, I can go to there. And I can go to... Where's the person saying, well, that's where we are. I'm over here. Never mind what you buggers are doing. I'm over here. And okay, whether I agree that Landcross is a great name for Hitachi, I don't. I may prove to be wrong. But the very fact that, their Landcross 1 machine at Bauma was like nothing else. It was like nothing else. Whether we will ever actually see it as a living, breathing machine remains to be seen. But at least somebody in there went, we can do that better. The industry's clearly headed that way. What's over there? Same with horses. Why not? Why are they not bred like cows? What's the difference? Are you talking about for food? I mean, I don't have a major issue with eating horse. Never done it here, but I have done it overseas, and I don't see what the issue is. Personally, if we're talking about animal cuteness, I always think that cows are way more cute and cuddly than a horse. Horse, too many teeth in its head. Whereas a cows are cool. I'll happily eat one though. Not a whole one, at least not in a single sitting, but I'll happily eat one. Jim says, luckily, I don't mind upsetting people. But one of the lines in that morning monologue was, I don't think it's about upsetting people. And I do realise that people do have a nasty habit of taking offence and taking umbrage when you say things that they don't necessarily agree with. I think we've got very thin-skinned on that. But I don't actually think it's a matter of upsetting people. There was a time, I actually said it in that monologue, there was a time when being a maverick wasn't tolerated, it was celebrated. Like a Joe Bamford, like a Sid Hunt, like a Marco Lorini, that they've gone off in a different direction. Well, fair play to them. Fair play for having the balls and the gumption to do that. Whereas now it's, why are they doing that? What is that? I don't know whether it's a fear. When I think about it from a musical point of view, I mean, I personally think that Simon Cowell is the worst thing to ever happen to the music industry. Just looking to turn music into a sausage machine that churns out money by doing what everybody else does. You go back to the 80s, Stock Aitken and Walkman, who made Kylie Minogue, Rick Astley and Joseph Donovan all sound exactly the same. What's the bloody point of that? Why have you never seen a Hendrix or a Sex Pistols on Britain's Got Talent? We've got one of the best music industries in the entire world. but we don't actually do that on national TV because, Aunt Betty might get upset if somebody played a bit too loud, or, their lyrics are a bit sketchy, or they made a stand on something. Oh, no, we can't. Look at the outcry we had over the what was the fellow's name? Bob Villan at Glastonbury. He's using his platform. Now, do I like the music? Not particularly. Do I think it was necessarily the right way to do it? Well, maybe not. But, he's used. I'm on stage. I'm on TV. I have certain beliefs about the situation with Israel and the Palestinians. I'm going to say something. Oh no, couldn't have that on X Factor or Britain's Got Talent or Sunday Night at the Palladium. Oh no, because that might upset somebody's sensibilities. Fuck their sensibilities. When did the public in 1951, were they sat there saying, really wish somebody would come along and do something different with music? Your Sinatras and your Perry Comos are all well and good, but I wish something was a little more rough and a bit more raw. No, they didn't do that. There wasn't a Simon Cowell trying to engineer that. What the world needs. We've got Frank Sinatra. What the world needs now is another Frank Sinatra. No. What the world actually needed was an Elvis Presley. And Elvis Presley, self-invented, came out of nowhere and rocked the world. Elvis Presley and Joe Bamford. I must be the only person that's ever put those in the same sentence, but yeah. Never look at what Joe Bamford did. Look at the environment. I've already talked about the technology and the engineering capabilities. But if you think with the advent of the backhoe loader and the other machines he built as a result, we'd gone from an industry that was largely bloke with pickaxe or bloke with shovel to mechanized, almost in the blink of an eye, because somebody, A, had the vision to do it, and B, had the balls to back their idea. Where's that person now? We now live in an age where we'll do what our predecessors did, but we'll put a camera on it, or we'll say it's got AI on it, or it's got some object detection thing on it. Same. Jim says, with our plant hire system, we need a machine to be as many things as possible as we work in an ever-changing environment. One of my designs fills that gap very well. It is no accident that the JCB backhoe loader, the 3CX, was the plant hirer's machine of choice for decades, for years and years and years. Want to dig a hole? 3CX. Want to load a truck? 3CX. Want to move some material? 3CX. It was the answer to every problem we had. And yet somehow, as an industry, we all decided, well, mini excavators dig perhaps a little bit better than a backhoe loader, and a telehandler can lift a bit higher than a telehandler. And so rather than having that one machine, what were plant hirers good at? Buy them cheap, sell them high. We'll take a machine, we'll run it into the ground, we'll buy it as cheaply as we possibly can. No bells, no whistles. You want a seat? Well, you bloody would. Well, okay, you can have a seat. We will do things as best we possibly can with as little as we possibly can, and we will hire it at the best possible rate. And yet, they and the manufacturers that supply them decided, actually, we'll go and do things differently. Mick is on his way out the door. He's off to catch up with the polkas and the local Italians, which are two different things, I have to say. Enjoy your day, Mick. Good to see you here, and glad to have you back in our midst. That's going to do us, because I have been talking for an hour and a half. I wonder how many people were upset today. I hope it's a few, because that's what it needs. It does need. You know what they say? A camel isn't a camel a horse designed by committee? Yeah. I think that's the old saying. Committees aren't good at things. You need a loud voice, a forceful voice, somebody that's going to take things in a different direction. And I do think we are sadly lacking that these days. And on that note, people, I'm going to love you and leave you. Tomorrow is going to be a different one. Tomorrow's morning monologue is on the subject of loneliness. And I don't want to get all mental healthy do-goodery about this, but I've been thinking a lot about the subject of loneliness, and I will tell you more about it tomorrow. But if ever, you don't have to share it here, but if ever you felt lonely, and I don't mean just alone, I mean, even if you are working away in your machine and you've got the door closed and you're just there with your own thoughts, and you thought, Christ, this is a lonely existence, tomorrow's show will be for you. Hope to see you then. Until then, everybody, have a fantastic day. I'll see you very soon. And go be a rebel, be a maverick. Because, who wants to be Muzak? Enjoy your day. See you soon. Actually, Jim says, great crack session today, Mark. Thank you very much indeed, Jim. I didn't realise that you had already beaten me to the punch on this whole idea of mavericks. I'm going to shut this shop up and I'm going to read your post now, because I want to see how close we were. And Friday's show was great too. Thank you I forgot to mention that. Thank you to everybody that watched that video, the interview with Kevin Soller. It's gone down very, very well. I think the last I saw, we were up to about 600 views, which is unusual for an interview. It's unusually high number. So thank you for everybody that tuned in. And I know a lot of you stuck around for a long while on it as well. So thank you very much indeed for that. And Dan says, have a great wet day, guys. Yes, indeed. Stay dry. Stay warm, stay toasty, stay maverick, would you? See you tomorrow.